Evan Mitchell sat back in the soft chair of the sleek spacecraft, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. As Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, his life had taken a turn no one could have predicted. Just 2 years ago, he was still a regular astronaut working hard to learn everything he could about space, planets, and other civilizations. Now he was sitting on the bridge of a ship that was traveling through uncharted space, headed for a planet no human had ever visited before. The home of the Xyranites, an alien species. He ran a hand through his hair and glanced at his crew. They were all feeling the same nervous energy, each of them wondering what would happen when they met the Xyranites. This was humanity's first official intergalactic encounter. Evan's mind raced as he thought about the responsibility on his shoulders. He had to make sure this first meeting went well. It was crucial for the future of humanity. The crew members, all seasoned astronauts and scientists, had trained for this moment for months. They were prepared to represent Earth and its people with the dignity and respect they believed it deserved. But none of them could have imagined how this trip would change everything. Their mission was to attend a grand event, a ceremony in honor of the Xyranites' long-standing peace treaty with other galactic races. It was a chance for the humans to show their willingness to cooperate with the various alien civilizations that had been slowly coming together in this new galactic alliance. The Xyranites were known for their elegance and power, but they were also highly secretive. No one knew much about them, and that made the entire crew uneasy. As the spacecraft descended toward the Xyranite capital city, Evan's heart beat faster. He had prepared for every possible scenario, but nothing could have prepared him for what was to come. The city was breathtaking. Towers of shimmering light reached into the sky, surrounded by gardens of alien plants that glowed softly in the dark. The air smelled of something unfamiliar, sweet and clean, like nothing Evan had ever breathed before. The Xyranites welcomed them in grand fashion, and Evan couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the beauty and sheer power of their civilization. They were different from humans in almost every way. Tall and slender, their skin shimmered like a smooth, polished stone, their eyes deep and black, as if they could see into the very soul. The leader of the Xyranites, a tall woman with silver hair and a regal presence, greeted Evan. Her name was Queen Amira. Her voice was soft but carried a weight that made everyone listen. "Welcome to the Xyranite world, Ambassador Mitchell. We are honored to have you here." Evan stood tall and returned her gaze. There was something about her that immediately captured his attention. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was more than that. There was an aura of confidence around her, a power that seemed to radiate from her every move. The evening began with small talks, introductions, and formalities. Evan tried to keep his focus, knowing how important this was. His crew mingled with the Xyranites, exchanging pleasantries, but Evan's mind kept returning to Queen Amira. She was everywhere he looked. As the event progressed, the Xyranites demonstrated their advanced technology, showing how they could manipulate light and sound with just a thought. They demonstrated how their people could heal quickly from injuries, using energy fields to speed up the body's natural healing processes. Evan watched, fascinated, but a sense of unease settled in his stomach. What did they want from humanity? Why were they so eager to make this alliance? Later in the evening, when most of the guests were gathering in the palace's vast dining hall, Evan was walking along a quiet corridor, lost in his thoughts. He felt the presence behind him, and before he could turn around, a voice spoke. "Ambassador Mitchell." It was Queen Amira. She had followed him, and now, standing only a few feet away, her gaze fixed on him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavy, like something important was about to happen. Evan couldn't explain it, but the air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Her eyes, deep and endless, seemed to be searching his soul, as if she could see something inside him that no one else could. "I've been watching you," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Evan was taken aback. He had no idea what to say to that. I didn't mean to be in your way, Your Highness," he said, trying to recover from the surprise. She shook her head slowly. It's not about being in my way, Ambassador.
It's about destiny, about the future of our people and yours.
Evan's heart skipped a beat. What was she talking about? What could she possibly mean by that? Before he could ask, she stepped closer. You've been chosen, Evan Mitchell. The words echoed in his mind, and a chill ran down his spine. Chosen for what? Chosen for what? He asked, his voice low. Amira smiled, a mysterious glint in her eyes. You will understand soon. You are to be my husband now. Evan blinked, his mind struggling to process what he'd just heard. Had he misunderstood? What do you mean, Your Highness? I'm not here for anything like that. She raised a hand, her fingers glowing faintly. You don't have a choice, Ambassador. It has already been decided. Evan took a step back, shaking his head. This is insane. I'm here as a representative of Earth. This is a misunderstanding. But Amira's gaze remained steady.
No, it is not. The Galactic marriage contract has already been signed.
You and I are bound, whether you understand it or not. It is the law of the galaxy. Evan's thoughts were a whirlwind. You've got to be joking, he said, though he didn't feel like joking at all. I do not joke, she replied. I will show you the contract, and you will see that this is no misunderstanding. Evan's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. He had no idea what kind of game Amira was playing, but this felt like something far more serious. You're telling me that I'm married to you? She nodded, her expression unreadable. Yes, and through this bond, our two peoples will be united. The warlords who threaten us will have no power over the future of the galaxy. But this marriage is more than just politics. It is our future, our protection, and our legacy. Evan didn't know what to say. Everything about this was overwhelming, confusing, and most of all, it was terrifying. He was suddenly in the middle of something much bigger than he had ever imagined, and the weight of it felt like it was crushing him.
I need to see this contract, he said, his voice shaking.
Amira stepped closer, holding out a small, glowing tablet.
The contract is binding, Evan.
It cannot be undone, but you will come to understand. You will come to see why it was meant to be.
He took the tablet reluctantly, still trying to make sense of it all.
As his fingers touched the screen, the document appeared. It was ancient, written in a language he couldn't understand. But as his eyes scanned it, something strange happened. The words seemed to shift, almost as if they were alive. And before he knew it, a voice boomed in his mind. You are bound to her, and through this bond the future of your people is sealed. There is no escape from the contract. Evan's breath caught in his throat. What was happening? Had he just heard that in his mind? Or had the contract somehow reached into his thoughts? Amira stood silently, watching him as he processed everything. You are my husband now, she repeated softly, and together we will face whatever comes. Evan was silent, his mind spinning. He had come to this planet with hopes of peace and diplomacy, but now he found himself in the middle of an ancient and powerful galaxy-wide agreement. How could this be real? How could this happen to him? As the weight of the situation sank in, he realized one thing. His life had just changed forever. Evan Mitchell's mind raced as the words, "You are my husband now," echoed in his ears. He stood frozen, staring at Queen Amira, who seemed utterly calm, her expression unreadable. Her gaze never left his, as if she had already seen the future and knew exactly what was going to happen next. Evan's heart hammered in his chest, his thoughts a blur of confusion and disbelief. What do you mean? He finally asked, his voice shaky. I'm here on a diplomatic mission, not for this. He gestured between them, his hand trembling slightly. Amira's lips parted into a soft, knowing smile. There was something in her eyes, a glimmer of understanding, as if she knew exactly how overwhelming this was for him. "I understand this is unexpected, Evan," she said calmly. "But you must understand that this was never just about diplomacy. This contract binds us in ways you cannot yet comprehend."
Evan's head spun.
A contract? What contract? He had heard of peace treaties, of political alliances. But this felt entirely different. There was no way to turn back, no way to change the course of what was happening. His mind raced back to the ceremony earlier in the day, the grandeur of the event, the alien technology, and the overwhelming feeling of being completely out of place. He had been focused on representing Earth, on making sure humanity had a chance at peace in this vast and mysterious galaxy. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her. He hadn't expected her to choose him. "I don't understand," Evan said, his voice low. "How could this happen? How could I be married to you?"
"I've never agreed to any of this." Amira stepped closer, her presence commanding and yet strangely comforting.
"The Galactic marriage contract is not something you agree to in the way you might think. It is an ancient law, one that transcends mere human consent. It binds us, Evan, not just in this life but across the stars. Your people and mine are linked now. This union will strengthen both of our races, creating an unbreakable bond. You, as my husband, will ensure the peace of both our worlds." Evan felt his pulse quicken, and for a moment he thought he might faint. He had always known space was full of surprises, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. He had no idea what the Galactic marriage contract was, but he had already begun to suspect it was far more complicated than a simple political arrangement. "You don't get it," Evan said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I came here to represent Earth. I came here to help form an alliance, to ensure our future. But I never signed up for this."
Amira didn't seem perturbed by his outburst. In fact, she seemed almost amused, her gaze softening.
"You don't have to understand everything at once, Evan. All I ask is that you accept your role. The galaxy works in mysterious ways, and the universe chose you." "Chose me?" Evan shook his head. "How? Why?"
"I'm just one person. I don't even know who you really are."
"I don't know anything about your people, your customs, your laws. How could the galaxy, how could you, just decide I'm your husband?" Amira's eyes softened as she reached out, her hand resting gently on his arm.
You are not the only one bound by the stars, Evan. The universe has a way of choosing the right person for the right time.
Our marriage is more than just a personal bond. It's the key to something much greater. Together, we can bring peace to the galaxy. We can build something that has never been possible before. Evan looked down at her hand on his arm, a shiver running down his spine. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice, and all he could do was look down into the unknown. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. He had no choice. The contract was real. The marriage was real. His life and the fate of Earth had just been irrevocably altered. "I still don't understand," Evan said, his voice quiet now. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to be your husband." Amira's gaze never wavered. "You will be. In time, you will understand that this is the only way forward. There is no other path. The warlords who threaten us will stop at nothing to destroy everything we've built. But together, our bond will create a shield that nothing can break." Evan felt a chill settle in his chest at the mention of the warlords. He had heard rumors about the Warlord Alliance, a ruthless group of warlords who sought to control the galaxy. If what Amira said was true, this marriage wasn't just about politics. It was about survival. Amira took a step back, giving Evan space to breathe. I will give you time to understand. But know this, Evan, there's no turning back. The contract has been signed, and the future of our worlds now rests in our hands. She turned slightly, her gaze drifting to the distant horizon of the alien city. You will be the one to decide how this plays out. Together, we will face the coming storm. Evan watched her for a moment, his mind reeling. The weight of it all was too much to bear. What had he gotten himself into? That night, Evan couldn't sleep. His mind was filled with thoughts of the Galactic marriage contract, of Queen Amira, and of the strange destiny that seemed to be unfolding before him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, calm, confident, and somehow sure of everything. It made him feel small, insignificant, like a mere pawn in a game much bigger than he could ever understand. The next day, he was summoned to meet with Amira again. This time it was in a private room deep within the palace, far from the grandeur of the public ceremonies. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with the kind of energy that comes from something far beyond ordinary. Amira stood by a large window, looking out over the planet's lush landscape. She was a striking figure, her silver hair shimmering in the soft light, her eyes as dark and endless as the night sky. Evan stepped into the room, his heart still racing. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, trying to sound composed. Amira turned to face him, her expression serious. "I wanted to show you something," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Something that'll help you understand what's at stake here." Evan followed her to a large table where a strange device lay. It glowed with a soft, pulsating light, unlike anything he had ever seen. Amira gestured for him to sit, and then she pressed a button on the device. The surface shimmered, and a holographic image appeared in front of them. The image showed a galaxy, vast and beautiful, but also marked by darkness. There were warships and fleets clashing, explosions lighting up the stars. But as the image zoomed in, Evan saw something even more terrifying. Massive, shadowy figures standing on the edge of a planet. The warlords.
"The warlords have united," Amira said quietly. "And they will stop at nothing to dominate the galaxy."
They seek to destroy everything we have built. Your people, Earth, are now part of this struggle. Evan's throat tightened as he looked at the image. This wasn't just about politics. This wasn't just about a contract or a marriage. This was about survival, about the future of humanity and the galaxy. Amira looked at him, her eyes unwavering. You see now, Evan? You are more than just a representative of Earth. You are the key. Together, we will form a bond that will change the fate of all our worlds. Evan sat back, taking in the magnitude of what she was saying. He had always thought of Earth as a small planet in a vast, uncaring universe. But now, it seemed that everything was connected, that every choice, every action, had consequences far beyond what he had imagined. The weight of the responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. He had no choice but to accept the truth of what Amira had said. This was his reality now, and there was no turning back. The next few days were a blur of meetings, discussions, and briefings. Evan couldn't escape the feeling that he was drowning in a sea of unknowns. The more he learned about the Veil Empire and the galactic politics at play, the more overwhelming it all became. Queen Amira had told him that their union was vital for peace, but the more he saw, the less certain he was that he could fulfill the role she had chosen for him. He still didn't understand the galactic marriage contract entirely. It wasn't just a political alliance. It was a bond that tied him to Amira in ways he couldn't explain. The ancient laws surrounding it were so complex that even Amira, with all her knowledge and power, couldn't fully explain them. What was clear was that the marriage wasn't just symbolic. It had the potential to shape the future of the galaxy. The warlords had begun to attack. The alliance between the Veil Empire and the other galactic civilizations had been under threat for years. But now, it seemed like the moment of truth had arrived. The warlords, a collection of ruthless leaders and merciless conquerors, had united under one banner. Their goal was simple: to dominate and control every star system they could reach. The Xyranites and their allies were fighting back, but the warlords' power was vast and growing stronger by the day. Evan's role was unclear, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't run away. He had never signed up for this. He had never asked to be married to Queen Amira. But now, he was part of something much bigger than himself. His thoughts constantly returned to her. Amira, with her silver hair and calm, commanding presence. There was an undeniable strength in her, something that drew him in despite his confusion. But there was something else, too. Beneath the surface, he could see the weight of leadership pressing down on her. This wasn't just a queen. This was a woman who had seen her world in chaos, and now she was desperately trying to hold it together. He had heard the rumors about the Vial Empire's ruthless ways, their secretive methods of keeping order. But none of that mattered to him right now. What mattered was the growing war. He was supposed to be part of this now. He was supposed to be a leader, but how could he lead when he didn't even know where to begin? As the days passed, Amira took him under her wing. She didn't rush him or push him into anything. Instead, she spoke to him as an equal, teaching him about the galaxy and the politics that bound them all. She explained the history of the Vial Empire and how the Galactic marriage contract had been used in the past to unite worlds during times of war. It was more than just a marriage. It was a symbol of solidarity, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. Despite everything, Evan began to feel a strange sense of duty growing within him. He couldn't deny the gravity of the situation. The warlords weren't just a distant threat anymore. They were right at their doorstep. And now, more than ever, Earth was part of this struggle. Humanity's future was tied to the Vial Empire's survival. One morning, after another exhausting series of briefings with the War Council, Evan found himself standing on the balcony of Amira's palace. The view was breathtaking. Vast stretches of alien landscapes below, with distant stars shining brightly above. It felt like the weight of the universe was resting on his shoulders, and the sky seemed to stretch out forever, as if it were reminding him of how small he was in the grand scheme of things. The quiet sound of footsteps behind him caused him to turn. It was Amira. She had a way of appearing without warning, as if she were always nearby, watching, observing. "You look troubled," she said softly, standing beside him and looking out over the landscape. Evan nodded, though he didn't know how to put his feelings into words. "I don't know how I'm supposed to do this," he admitted. "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be a part of your empire's fight." Amira didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stood beside him, her presence calming, as if she was giving him the space to think. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but firm.
"I never asked for this either, Evan. But the universe has a way of choosing what we must face.
The galaxy is at war. The warlords have seen our weakness. And now they're coming for us. For all of us." Evan turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "You don't seem afraid," she smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Fear is something I've learned to control. It's a tool, not an enemy. But that doesn't mean I don't feel it."
I am afraid for my people. I am afraid for your people.
But most of all, I am afraid that we will fail, that the galaxy will fall into chaos, and that we will lose everything we fought for.
Evan's throat tightened. He had always seen Amira as a leader, strong and unshakable.
But now, he saw the burden she carried. She wasn't just a queen. She was a woman fighting for the survival of her people, and the weight of that responsibility was crushing.
"I don't know if I can help," Evan said quietly. "I'm just one person."
"I'm not trained for this. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a diplomat."
I don't even know what I'm doing here. Amira turned to face him fully, her expression softening. "That's where you're wrong."
"You may not have asked for this, But you are part of something much bigger. Your presence here, your connection to Earth. It's the key.
The warlords are not just a threat to the Vile Empire, Evan. They are a threat to all of us.
They must be stopped, and together we will do it. Evan wanted to argue, wanted to say that he wasn't ready for this responsibility, that he was out of his depth. But something in Amira's voice, something in her gaze, stopped him. She believed in him, and somehow he knew that belief was more than just a queen's duty to her people. There was something more between them now, something he couldn't ignore. I can't promise you I'll be the leader you need, Evan said, his voice low. But I'll stand with you. I'll do what I can. Amira's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm.
That's all I ask, Evan. Stand with us.
Stand with me. As the days went by, Evan found himself becoming more involved in the war efforts. He sat in on strategy meetings, discussed tactics with military leaders, and began to understand the complexity of the Galactic War. He learned that the warlords weren't just soldiers. They were a coalition of powerful beings, each with their own agenda, their own motivations, and if the galaxy was to have any hope of defeating them, they would need to form an alliance that was unbreakable. Amira, despite the weight of her duties, always found time to help him. She was patient, guiding him through the intricacies of galactic politics and warfare. But it wasn't just her knowledge that drew him in. It was her strength, her determination. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the future of every world, every species, every star in the galaxy. And as they spent more time together, Evan began to see her not just as the queen he had been forced to marry, but as a leader, a partner. Her unwavering commitment to peace and justice had begun to change something in him. He no longer saw this as a burden. He saw it as a cause worth fighting for. But the war was growing closer. The warlords were preparing for their final push, and the time to act was running out. Evan knew that soon they would all be called to make a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. He had no choice but to stand beside Amira, for Earth, for the galaxy, and for the people he had come to care about. As the sounds of battle began to echo across the stars, Evan realized something else. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for hope. And with Amira by his side, he knew they had a chance. Evan stood at the window of the palace, looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched before him like an endless sea of possibility, filled with wonders and dangers that he could barely comprehend. In the days since the war had begun, he had come to understand just how vast and complicated the galaxy was. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, there was a part of him that felt alive in a way he hadn't before. He had been thrust into this position without warning, without choice. His marriage to Amira, the queen of the Vale Empire, had bound him to something much larger than himself. He had come to see it not just as a contract, but as a symbol of hope for the future. The warlords had been growing bolder, and every day that passed brought them closer to attacking the heart of the galaxy. Earth was now part of this battle, a crucial piece in the struggle for survival. But what terrified him the most wasn't the warlords or the galaxy's political games. It was the weight of the responsibility he now carried. As Amira's husband, as the human representative in this war, he was expected to be a leader. He was expected to help guide the galaxy's forces to victory, and the pressure was immense. Every decision, every move he made could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Amira had told him that they were stronger together, that their bond was a force that could change the course of the galaxy, and he wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that. Despite everything, they had a chance, but the fear in his heart was hard to shake. What if they failed? What if he failed? The sounds of footsteps behind him broke his thoughts. He turned to see Amira entering the room, her silver hair glowing softly in the dim light. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, met his. There was a calmness in her gaze, a strength that made him feel both at ease and, at the same time, inadequate. "You're deep in thought," she said, her voice soft but strong. Evan nodded, though he didn't speak right away. Instead, he walked over to a nearby table where a holographic map of the galaxy was displayed. It was a detailed map, showing the positions of the major forces in the war. The warlords had divided the galaxy into sectors, and they were pushing forward, taking world after world.
We can't let them win, Evan said quietly. But how?
How do we fight back against an enemy like that? Amira moved to stand beside him, her gaze scanning the map as well. We fight because we have no choice.
We fight because the galaxy needs us. The Veil Empire has stood for centuries, and we will not let it fall. But we cannot do it alone.
Evan turned to face her, his brow furrowed. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I'm just one person, Amira. I'm not a soldier, and I'm not a tactician.
What can I do?
Amira's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder.
You're more than just one person. You are the representative of Earth,
the human spirit.
That spirit is what will unite the galaxy. It is what will win this war.
Evan looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. The human spirit? He repeated. What do you mean by that? She smiled, her expression warm but full of purpose. You humans are resilient. You have a way of fighting, of pushing through even the toughest times. You've been through wars, conflicts, and hardships of your own. And every time you've risen stronger. That is why you are here now. Your people are not just a new race to the galaxy. You are a force in your own right. A force of hope. Evan felt a weight lift off his chest at her words. She believed in him. She believed in Earth. And that belief, that shared hope, was something he had to hold on to. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could be part of something bigger than himself. But there was still the war. The warlords were closing in, and the time to act was running out. The War Council had convened again that evening. Evan sat at the table with Amira and the other military leaders of the Veil Empire. There was an air of urgency in the room, a tension that was palpable. The warlords were advancing, and soon they would reach the heart of the galaxy, the seat of the Galactic Council. If the warlords captured the council, they would have control over all the systems in the galaxy.
This is our last chance, one of the generals said, his voice grave. If we don't stop them here, we may never be able to rally the other systems. We need a decisive victory.
Evan listened carefully, taking in the strategy. They were planning a large-scale assault on one of the warlords' strongholds. It would be risky, but it was their best shot at halting the warlords' advance. But there was a problem. The Veil Empire was strong, but it was not invincible. The warlords had more troops, more firepower, and they were relentless. Victory wasn't guaranteed. Evan knew that, but he also knew that they couldn't afford to sit back and wait. They had to fight, even if it seemed impossible. We have to show them that we won't back down, Evan said, his voice firm. We have to show them that the galaxy is united. Earth will stand with you.
Amira turned to him, her eyes full of pride.
You understand now. Together, we are stronger than we were apart. The plan was set to motion. The combined forces of the Veil Empire and the Earth Alliance would launch an assault on the warlord stronghold. It would be an all-out battle, and Evan was ready to stand beside Amira, ready to face whatever came their way. The days leading up to the battle were tense. There was no time to waste. Every hour mattered. The soldiers, both human and alien, prepared for war. The air was thick with the promise of conflict, but there was also something else. Something that had been growing between Evan and Amira. It wasn't just a political alliance anymore. It wasn't just a marriage for the sake of peace. There was something real between them, something that went beyond the weight of their responsibilities. Amira had become more than just the queen of the Veil Empire. She had become a partner, someone who shared in the struggle, who fought for the same cause. And as they stood together on the battlefield, Evan realized something important. He wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for the future of the galaxy. And, in a way, he was fighting for her. The day of the battle arrived. The forces gathered on the outskirts of the warlord's stronghold, their ships lined up in formation. Evan stood on the command deck of the flagship, watching the preparations. The moment had come. Amira joined him on the deck, her presence calming yet powerful. "This is it," she said, her voice steady. "Are you ready?" Evan nodded, his heart pounding.
Ready as I'll ever be. Together, they watched as the fleet moved forward, a symbol of unity and strength. The battle was fierce, but they fought with everything they had.
The warlords were strong, but they were no match for the combined might of the galaxy's forces. Evan fought alongside Amira, watching as they pushed back the enemy, one step at a time. In the end, it was a hard-won victory. The warlords were defeated, their forces scattered, but the battle was far from over. There would be more challenges, more struggles ahead. But for now, they had won. As the dust settled, Evan looked at Amira. Their eyes met, and in that moment, he knew something he hadn't fully understood before. This wasn't just about the war or the contract. This was about something bigger, something that could change the fate of the galaxy. And, in a strange way, he had found his place in it. He had found his purpose. Together, they would face whatever came next. Because, in the end, they were stronger together. And that was the true strength of humanity.